Fancy a classic tale laced with lusty satanic witchery, spectacular beheadings and devilish black humour? Well, of course you do. So come on in. We're talking Tim Burton's 1999 horror outing Sleepy Hollow, based loosely on a Washington Irving short story in which the marauding spectre of a headless horseman stalks a quiet American village.
I've always wanted to do a fairy tale, and this is like one of our few American fairy tales.
The Western Woods is a haunted place where brave men will not venture.
An American classic it may be, but the roots of this particular legend lay firmly in Middle Ages Europe, with tales of headless horsemen in Ireland, Britain and Germany. The film's production would also head to Europe after failing to find a suitably spooky location in the US.
Action!
But England couldn't deliver Burton's nightmare village either, so they created one. The village was built in incredible detail over a period of 3 months and included a covered bridge and a church. The addition of animals and people turned this Sleepy Hollow into a living, breathing thing, complete with fairy tale touches that offered the director the sense of ominous foreboding that he sought for the film. Considering Tim Burton's lifelong love of hammer horror, it's perhaps surprising that Sleepy Hollow was his first stab at directing a horror movie, preferring comic book and fantasy outings until then. Even so, he couldn't help but try to tone down the horror in Andrew Kevin Walker's original screenplay by asking Tom Stoppard to infuse it with humour. In this adaptation of the famous tale, Ichabod Crane is a New York police constable sent to the upstate hamlet of Sleepy Hollow. His task is to investigate a series of macabre murders said to be the work of the legendary Headless Horseman. During the investigation, this feverishly pious constable encounters a potential lover,
Katrina,
witchcraft and Satanism, and even the Headless Horseman himself. One of Sleepy Hollow's many assets is its amazing cast, which includes Christina Ricci, Michael Gambon, and 2 of my all-time favourites in the shape of Miranda Richardson and the ever-watchable Christopher Walken. Johnny Depp was always Tim Burton's first choice to play Ichabod Crane, but he also considered Daniel Day-Lewis, Liam Neeson and Brad Pitt. But Depp was disappointed that neither the studio nor Burton would allow him to portray Crane as he was described in Washington Irving's original short story.
That sort of snipe nose of Ichabod Crane, the legendary Ichabod Crane, and the big ears and the, long hands and arms and stuff.
That would have been interesting to see, but Burton preferred Depp to express that through his performance, rather than spend hours in makeup every day. The film may well have been made at a time when CGI was dominant, but the real star of Sleepy Hollow's special effects catalogue was purely practical, and for a story with so many beheadings, it was essential that those disembodied heads were frighteningly lifelike.
Talk about intimations of mortality, I've seen my head in somebody's hand.
But just having those heads roll wasn't enough for our ghoulish director. He wanted them to spin too. And here's where I put my own spin on this video, by exploring some of the differences between this classic film and the story that inspired it. The first major difference is that the Ichabod Crane of the story is a school teacher, not a police constable, and nor is he skeptical about the existence of the Headless Horseman, being a believer in both ghosts and monsters.
To detect the guilty, we must use our brains to recognize vital clues, using up-to-date scientific techniques.
The film is set in the year 1799, and the idea of Crane using forensic science in his investigation may seem a little far-fetched. But the first recorded use of forensics in law occurred 15 years before that, in 1784, when it helped to convict a man by the name of John Toms.
We need to operate immediately.
Operate? She's dead.
Conducting an autopsy also seems out of time in the film, but the first recorded use of that aspect of criminal investigation dates all the way back to 44 BC, when the body of Julius Caesar himself went under the knife to establish which of his 23 stab wounds led to his death. And what of that amazing tree, which represents the brooding and twisted satanic influence that Sleepy Hollow is under?
The tree of the dead.
In the story, there is a description of a tree near to the school where Crane teaches, but it in no sense describes the tree of the film. Sadly, the tree isn't real and can't be visited, because it's purely the creation of Sleepy Hollow's talented production team. It was created as the centerpiece of the Western Woods, in one of the biggest sound stages on the planet.
Cut!
You've been watching the final episode in a series on satanic horrors, which also includes The Devil Rides Out, The Exorcist, Angel Heart, and The Omen.